thanks for that kind introduction. Now I have to make taxes exciting for me. It's a pleasure to be and an honor to be in front of this organization, an organization that's had 50 years of life doing the hard stuff, fighting for the history of your place, defending the history of your place. So with that, I hope that I can lend to you your discussion. Last month I was presenting in Mobile. Y'all might want to turn around and just face this. I could care less if you see me. This is the important stuff. And also, you'll have a copy of this presentation on file. Think about who we are as a people, as a country. Our country is essentially formed on a tax revolt, right? The taxation is what drives who we are as Americans. We bristled at new taxes put onto our community and our country back 240 years ago. In 2009, I presented in front of a bunch of city planners. It was a Smart Growth Conference in Seattle. And I'll do it for this room. Just a show of hands, who's read your local tax assessment policy? Anyone? I got one person. Two people. So it was kind of mind-blowing to me that folks that are involved in land use decisions, trying to create better places, would only talk about them in this kind of almost spiritual way. It makes us feel better, right? It's a green way. We're all happy when we see trees. Well, that's great, but what is the cost? What's the ramifications financially with this? And now here I am. I'm an architect. I like to draw pictures and look at pictures, right? Yet I went in and read the tax code. It was not fun. It was not easy. I drank a pot of coffee and just muscled my way through. But I love this quote from Mark Twain: "A person who won't read has no advantage over one who can't read." If we're choosing not to read this stuff, well, then shame on you and me for not reading this stuff, right? So in 1976, it was a significant groundswell. Now, you all were 10 years old at this point when the tax credit system changed in the country, and all of a sudden you had new tools to deal with leveling the playing field with older buildings, right? That system still needs to be rethought. It's still not perfect. This is an iterative thing. Tax policy is not genetic to who we are. I'm from Asheville. Who's been to Asheville, North Carolina? Oh, great, wow. Thanks for coming to Asheville and eating in our restaurants and drinking our beer. Asheville is up in the mountains. Y'all know where it is. Smoky Mountains, Blue Ridge Parkway, bluegrass music, lots of beer. We've got 40 breweries, 40. That's about 2,000 people per brewery. It's ridiculous. There's a new one just opened up in the newspaper yesterday that they're trying to open up a new one. At this point, it's getting ridiculous. Like any cute little mountain town, we're a little quirky. We have men dressed as nuns on tall bikes that can fire, right? They're typical little mountain town. Well, we didn't start that way. In the 1800s, this is what we look like. This is a shot down Main Street. Y'all have stood here 20 years after this picture was taken. This is what it became. We like to say the 3 T's made Asheville: trains, tourism, and tuberculosis. A lot of polluted industry towns summered up in Asheville because of the clean mountain air. We had the second streetcar line in the entire country. Presidents came to visit, presidents still visit. And y'all may not know this about Asheville, but during the 1920s, we were growing at 20% in population every single year of the decade. We were the second largest city in North Carolina. The only city that was bigger than Asheville by the Depression was Winston-Salem. Did y'all know that? We were bigger than Charlotte by the time the Depression hit. We achieved the highest debt per capita of the entire United States. We were number 1 in debt when the Depression hit. We thought we had $5 million in the bank when the Depression hit. Turns out we had $18,000 in the bank. A little clerical error. Our entire city council was indicted and the mayor committed suicide. That's how we entered the Depression. So count your blessings. In Asheville, we call that leadership. Thomas Wolfe, famous American author, native of Asheville, had this to say about his hometown. Asheville has squandered fabulous sums. They've flung away the earnings of a lifetime. They've mortgaged those of a generation to come. They have ruined a city, and in doing so, they've ruined themselves, their children, and their children's children. These are not so pleasant words to say about your hometown, right? Some would call this a little undiplomatic. He was threatened, his family was threatened. His second book, he was told that you you just go on and stay up in New York City, don't you ever set foot in town again. His second book was called You Can't Go Home Again, for obvious reasons. In a way, he was right, that this would be a multi-generational problem that we would have to deal with. To show you the damage to the children's children, this is the newspaper headline from 1976. This is us paying off our last bond. And you can see it's important because we get some guys to burn the bond. Miss Asheville's wearing tiara. We teleprompter and Billy Graham. When Billy shows up for something, that's a big deal. But check this out. The headline is somebody dying in a prison fire in some other county. We couldn't even celebrate the fact that we'd just gotten off this debt. That it was just, we just felt embarrassed by it. 1976. So when we got out of debt, we started cooking with gas. We started doing what other places did. We started building highways. We cut one through the middle of our downtown called the Crosstown Expressway, or as we know as I-240, through the middle of our town. And the coup de grace is when we blew Bowcatcher Mountain open and made the Bowcatcher cut. The citizens actually wanted a tunnel. Unfortunately, DOT had no technological know-how to build a tunnel, even though some lost civilization left us one right here. So on the other side of the cut, the mall happened and our downtown died. Is this a familiar story? This all happened to you all? I mean, these are shots of downtown Asheville from not too long ago. This is a 1996 Chevy Celebrity. Why don't y'all put some elbow grease into this baby? It's a fixer-upper, right? This all could be yours, this wonderful architecture, these boarded up buildings that we just left behind. You can blow a cannon off downtown and not hit a pedestrian. We just boarded up these buildings in our embarrassment and just left them there fallow. This is the Asheville that many of you don't know. This wasn't too long ago. It's like 20 years ago. Like a Greek choir, anytime somebody tried to fix these buildings downtown, we would hear from the community, that's not who we are. We're not city people. We're not Boston. We're not Charleston. We're mountain rural people. Y'all get that in your community? That'll never work here. Don't even try. Don't even bother. You go on to Atlanta and do that. Don't do that here. We're some rural place, right? So there were people that tried. This is Julian Price. Julian Price inherited a tremendous amount of money and folded it into a real estate development company called Public Interest Projects. But I'll come back to him for a second. I want to take you on to my past, to my grandfather. My grandfather was a carpenter, and he introduced me to buildings. He's the reason why I went to architecture school. I grew up in this tiny little place called Rome, New York, in upstate New York. Anybody know where Rome is? It's way upstate, we've got something in the back. Not a great place. Rome is so awful. This is the Chambers marketing right here. So it's in the center of all the action. Like, we don't even have action in Rome. Like, if you're in Albany, why not drive 2 hours west to Rome, right? When I was a kid, they were struggling with looking at their own death in the face and trying to figure out what to do, and they gambled. Rome actually had a good history. It was the center of the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal started in Rome, New York, and went east and west from there. If you ever sang, there's a classic folk song called the Erie Canal Song with the mule named Sale. They actually mentioned my hometown in that song. So this is what my town looked like in its heyday in the 1920s. So in the 70s, when we lost all of our manufacturing, and we actually have an Air Force base that is since left when I was in college, we were trying to figure out, what do you do when you lose your manufacturing? Well, they had this idea that, do y'all remember your Revolutionary War history? Remember the pivotal battle of Fort Stanwix? Yeah, it wasn't so pivotal, but it was in Rome. And we had this inconvenient situation where our hometown was built where the fort was. So when I was a kid, I witnessed the tearing down of all of these buildings. They're all now gone. And they built a Revolutionary War fort. So we have a wooden fort in the middle of my downtown. Take that, Fort Benning. So, it's kind of crazy. We've got these Italian guys that dress up as revolutionaries, and we occasionally get a Canadian tourist. Sorry, Grayson. And that's what we get. And if that wasn't good enough, they took the rest of downtown and turned it into an urban renewal area and said, well, why not add this stuff? And it's the 70s, let's build a pedestrian mall, why not? A plaza on the pedestrian mall, because apparently 12 acres of open space wasn't good enough. 2 parking garages, because y'all are going to come up to Rome now and look at our wooden fort, right? A city hall, a new city hall. We just walked away from the other one 2 blocks away. What's interesting is this parking garage is way too far away from City Hall at over 105 feet of distance. So they built a surface parking lot in front of that. They built a mall across the highway, and the craziest thing ever, it was like Le Corbusier meets the Ponte Vecchio, this big concrete structure with buildings on it that was a living bridge that shot out over the highway. When I was a kid, that's the first time I ever saw an escalator. And we used to go into that building and just ride the escalators all day long. 230 businesses got checks to relocate in this area, the businesses that were torn down. Of the 230 businesses that got checks, 18 of them relocated to the project area. The other 215 some odd businesses took their checks and moved to Florida. It basically eliminated our merchant class. So this is what we got. This is the fort, this is the church. And I basically left lake effect snow. This is what I grew up with, it was really fun. And I thought, hey, I could go to architecture school on the beach. This is awesome, I'll go to Miami. And I went to architecture school in Miami and bumped into these two. These are professors of mine, and at this time in the 80s, they were thinking about the built environment. A built environment I'd never even heard of, or couldn't even fathom that people would build this kind of suburban landscape of endless monolithic architecture, these highways and places that were inhospitable to human beings. To us, we joke that it's a cartoon of a landscape, the suburban sprawlness, but the sad reality is it's many places around this country. This is San Antonio. While I was in architecture school, I had the great fortune of spending 6 months in another Rome, Italy. And I lived here, I went to school there, and I ate there. And this whole time I'm wrestling with these two Romes, and I had one Rome that had thousands of years of history, and one Rome that couldn't even make it half a century, or half a millennium. How is it my Rome died and this Rome has stayed alive? And I'm just putting this lesson up front. Cities are places with people. They have a DNA, they have a genetic experience, they have a lineage. If you don't have a model in mind, you can't predict what's going on in your future. So put it a different way with the DNA. If you want to see me when I was a kid, this is me when I was 3 months old and I had hair. And this is my path, right? So I'm going to be Papa, whether I like it or not. You all do this, or more importantly, I look at this guy, my dad. I'm on a path to be him. Now, I'm genetically Italian. You can see that from my name and how much I wave my hands around, all of that. We like to eat a lot. Italians love food. We're a food culture. But we also have a genetic predisposition to heart disease in my family. So I know I have to eat right. I know I have to exercise. There's these things that I can see in my parents coming straight to me, right? Y'all do this. So who's Columbus want to be when it grows up? What's your path? What's your future? This is planning. This is thinking that forward, right? Do you want to avoid the heart attacks that Atlanta's had? Well, what are you doing differently? You know, if I want to avoid my family's heart disease, I ate quinoa last night. Has anybody ever eaten quinoa? It's good, but it's like, you know, it's like eating cardboard, but it's good for me. So back to Julian. So Julian invested $15 million in our real estate development company. It's a for-profit business. 75% of our money goes into sticks and bricks. We fix buildings. And we reserve 25% to seed entrepreneurs. We find the crazy people in town that banks think are too risky. So the first vegetarian restaurant, the Laughing Seat over here, I don't know if you all can see it right there. The Laughing Seat is Joe and Joan Eckert. They had a vegetarian lunch counter in the YMCA. Everybody ate their food. The banks wouldn't give them the loan because every time they went to the bank would look at the menu and they'd say, "Where's your pork? This is North Carolina, it's a pork state, where's the pork?" And they're like, "Well, we're vegetarians, we don't eat meat." And the banks are like, "Well, fine, that'll never work. You'll be out of business in a heartbeat." We put money behind them, they've bought out our investment, and now they're one of the anchor institutions in downtown. Asheville is one of the top 10 vegetarian cities in the entire country. That was hard. You know, we've got a nightclub, we've got bookstores. This is one of our buildings before and after. Banks wouldn't finance this because no one would live downtown. There was no market for people downtown. Therefore, apparently, even though there's a human history of people living in downtowns for tens of thousands of years, somehow people don't live in downtowns. This has been 99% leased up ever since we opened the doors. In the real estate world, that's called a home run. In our world, we call that simple logic. But in the banking industry, this shouldn't have happened, right? Julian was also, he's passed away in 2001, but he was always trying to deal with these children's children, and you could see how they would leave buildings in 1993. He had his own publication, his own newspaper to educate people, and I love this quote from Arthur Frommer. "Among cities with no particular recreation appeal, those that have preserved their past continue to enjoy tourism. Those that haven't receive almost no tourism at all. Tourism simply doesn't go to a city that's lost its soul. Right? This is a quote from Arthur Frommer. It's not like we're members of the CVB and we care about tourism. We just wanted people to just have a little bit of pride, a little bit of respect for themselves, and polish these buildings and fix them up. Ironically enough, Frommer's magazines of all places, 15 years later, would publish us as the number 5 place in the country to visit. Last year we became number 1. We have 9 million tourists a year that come through my town. Many of you all have been there. We're only a town of 90,000 people, so think of that economic effect that happens because we made a great place. It's worth coming to. Y'all get that? So there's money behind it, there's data to talk about. And what we find ourselves doing in our community is bringing that data forward. If we could just remove past the biases and the heuristics, the way that we think the cities operate, and just get to the data that's there, the story is different. So this is our downtown. And by the way, there'll be copies of this if anybody wants it. Just give me your card. These are bar charts of our central business district. So if we're a $15 million investor in downtown, what's downtown worth is an asset, is a portfolio of buildings. In 1991, our downtown was worth about $100 million. So just by fixing those upper stories, and we weren't the only ones, there was multiple investors that were doing this, just by fixing up the assets that were already there, this is what happened. So our downtown grew from $100 million of value, taxable value, to $500 million by 2007. To show you that it's not all love and roses in Asheville, these are some election campaign ads from this guy, Chris Peterson, who ran for city council. And Chris thought that the city's investment, so you all did $15 million worth of investment, public-private partnership. The city in 1991 invested $26 million, right? Who's got $26 million in their pocket? Anybody? Of course not. But in Chris's world, $26 million is a significant sum for parking garages and streetscapes, a waste of taxpayer dollars, a boondoggle. I mean, look at this poor guy, he's like shackled to council of the city, he's crying, he's just upset. Downtown parking fiasco, $1 million wasted on unused parking decks. Was it easy to park in my town when you all came? Of course not. It just took a while for the buildings to operate. But in Chris's world, this is a significant boondoggle. All right, let's do a little math here, folks. If you invest $26 million on a $100 million asset, and that asset blossoms to $500 million, is investing 26 and getting a $400 million return or of investment, is that a good return on investment? Yes. Why do we listen to Chris? He's got his own reality, that's great. He's entitled to an opinion. He's not entitled to his own facts. This is a fact, right? So, okay, what's a city? What are we all here for? Right? The city is just a finite boundary of land that has to be managed. My state has made it illegal for my city to annex. So the land that we have is the land that we have. We're the only city in the entire state that isn't allowed to annex. Thank you, North Carolina State Legislature. Y'all should try my legislature sometime, they're real fun. So as a portfolio of buildings, our land are the crops on that farm, right? Those acres are all we got. How we use them is critically important. Put another way, let's look up the word incorporate. So this is an Oxford dictionary. It says incorporate, to constitute a company, a city, or other organization as a legal corporation. So y'all are the board of directors of a multi-billion-dollar real estate development corporation, right? So we're just handling a $15 million investment. You have a much more expensive asset to deal with. My city, Asheville, is worth $12.8 billion. Does my mayor think of herself as the CEO of a $12.8 billion real estate development corporation? And if she did, she'd be 4 times the value of this guy. You know, he can run around with meat on a stick and talk about his money, right? So why shouldn't my mayor? This is it's a capital investment that goes into the ground that yields returns to the community. So if we think of like a farmer thinks about tilling the soil, the farmer doesn't go out and just till the entire farm. The farmer's thinking about that crop yield per acre in the yield, and then what it yields in the marketplace. It's all an economic formula. They just don't till the entire farm. This is one of our buildings. So here's the streetscape project that Chris complained about right here. So The city dropped a garbage can, a bike rack, 2 benches and a street tree, and a wider sidewalk. Thank you, city, for investing about, what, $28,000 in front of our front door. That's a subsidy to us, right? We took this building from $300,000 of value to $11 million of value. So the taxes on this portfolio piece, inside the portfolio, just shot up by 3,500%, right? Any bankers in the audience? Wouldn't you like to see a return on investment or a gain of 3,500%? Anybody have a 401k plan that grows by 3,500%? It's not the money that we're doing, it's the money the community now gets. Go out and buy 3,500% more garbage cans, we don't care. You know, it's a community investment. And people say to me like, well, Joe, that's fine, that's cute and everything, but that's only $11 million. We've got this Walmart over here at $20 million. Walmart pays $220,000 in taxes, a significant sum. I don't pay $200,000 in taxes. But this is my house over here on the right. Those are my dogs. They think they're lions. We do that to freak out our neighbors. It's a lot of fun. But, so we're on 1/10 of an acre. We pay $2,000 in taxes. So if a 1 acre cookie cutter fell from space and hit my neighborhood, it's going to grab 10 houses, right? Each of them paying about $2,000 or about $20,000 an acre in taxes. Now, if we take that 1 acre cookie cutter up, flatten space, and drop it on that Walmart, and divide the Walmart tax bill by the 34 acres it sits on, this is what it's paying per acre in taxes. Now, if you had an acre of our building downtown, this is what you get. I was presenting this in Colorado. I wanted to make it really simple for folks in Colorado. Sometimes they get confused by things. So I was like, all right, look, if you had an acre of land to grow something in Colorado, what are you going to grow? Like this job. So, you know, we understand cash crops, right? Now you're probably saying, you know, Joe, that's cute and everything, but you know, we take the loss in property taxes with Walmart, so take the gains with retail taxes, right? It's all about retail. So let's run the numbers on the retail tax. So a typical Walmart's about $77 million worth of sales, but you're looking at the wrong number. That's not the number you get. My city gets a portion of that. So 8 cents on the sales tax dollar, we're getting about 27% of that, or about $47,000 in property retail taxes per acre, which is more significant than the property taxes. But adding the property taxes to retail taxes, this is the total nut. This is what you get out of that Walmart. We're getting $51,000 an acre in total productivity. This is just our property taxes over here. Now, we have residential, office, we've got retail here and retail in the basement. So let's add our retail. Now you're cooking with gas. Jobs. We've got jobs in our building too. And when you break things down and make things in an apples-to-apples manner, you see a different reality of what your community is. So we'll just stack them up side by side. We even have 90 units of residential per acre versus their 0. There's a reason why we've been building cities for tens of thousands of years in a certain pattern that makes economic sense. It's just in this last 50 years, the model has been perverted. And we just have to be aware of that. So y'all might be saying, well, Joe, dude, what's your deal? Why do you hate Walmart? And I just want to clarify for a second. I presented at the International Association of Tax Assessing Officers. Anybody ever been to an assessor's conference? Yeah, it's a rip roaring time, isn't it? It makes a planning conference feel like Burning Man. I mean, it's just... This guy's presenting at 8 in the morning. Now, there's 2,000 assessors in the room. He's up there showing spreadsheets on how cheap his buildings are. Spreadsheet after spreadsheet. He's like, our buildings are so cheap. Hands out business cards. He's like, look, if we're building a Walmart in our community, call me. I'll share with you our construction bid tabs. We make the cheapest buildings possible. I'm in the back of the room drinking my coffee going, wow, this is brilliant. He's getting all of his tax bills in the entire country lowered in one meeting. How efficient is that? Now, as a citizen, my heart's collapsing because that's all I can hear is he's going to pay the lowest taxes in your community. I don't hate the player, I hate the game. This is the game. Good on him for figuring it out. They're smart people. I rolled up to the microphone and during Q&A and I asked him, I said, Mr. Terrell, what's the useful life of one of your buildings? And before I could even finish the sentence, he barked back at me, 15 years. We will be out of that building in 15 years. Our job is to make a depreciation cycle, depreciate it down to nothing, and build another building and depreciate it again. That's it. That's the magic of our tax system. Just be aware of that. This is your community. Do you want to have a 15-year investment in your community? Will it pencil off for you? Is this something you're leaving your grandkids or even your children at that level, 15 years? So that's the city side. Now you're a joint city-county community. Is this too boring? You getting this? This is kind of nerdy stuff to do at lunchtime. But I've got 2 voters out in the county for every 1 voter in the city. They're very hostile to us. They got our state legislature to take away our water system without paying us for it, and they took our airport because we complained about the water system getting taken. And to top it off, our state legislator called us a cesspool of sin. And I was on the board of directors for our downtown association. You know, we're polite. We're just like, maybe he really didn't mean it. And so we send a reporter to go talk to him again and like hope for an apology. Instead, he doubled down and he said, well, there's some good people in Buncombe County. It's just that downtown part. That's where the freaks and weirdos are. That's the cesspool. So we made t-shirts that say, welcome to the cesspool. We threw a beer party in the street. I mean, what can you do? But we also show our county residents what they pay to the county in property taxes versus what the city residents, what they pay in county taxes. So rather than hate on us, how about a thank you card every once in a while for all this money we're giving you? Here's the mall. Now you see why somebody would do commercial versus residential. Commercial typically pays more taxes than residential, so the mall's at $8,000 an acre. But let's not stop there, let's go into downtown. Here's our building downtown at $250,000 an acre of county property taxes versus the mall at $8 in the center of the chart. So what you find is what's good for downtown is great for the city, but it's unbelievable for the county. School board, how many kids do you think are in the downtown? 4. So we're getting all of this revenue produced out of the downtown in a very efficient manner. If anything, the school board should be the leader on seeing downtown revitalization. They're getting all gravy out of that. So I want you to realize this isn't scary math. I'm not a CPA. This isn't complex. This is 5th grade division. We're dividing value in acres. They're making a productivity model. We do this already. When we talk about cars, we don't talk about cars on a miles per tank basis, do we? If we did, y'all would laugh at me. You're like, Joe, that's silly. I'd be like, no, the Ford F-150 makes the most 650 miles per tank. Like, that's not what propels the car. The gasoline does. We say miles per gallon. The numbers change, and we should all be driving BMW Setas at 70 miles per gallon, right? This is for, what, a $2 commodity? Anybody got an acre of land in this town for less than $2 an acre? If we're doing this for a $2 commodity, we most certainly should be doing it for a $30,000 commodity. So we've done this all across the country, Canada, New Zealand, anywhere we go, we see the same pattern. For every $1 of county tax that somebody's paying out in the county to the county per acre, a city resident's paying about $5, the Walmart's about $7, the mall's about $9. As soon as you get to a 2-story building, this could be Driggs, Idaho, or downtown Durham, North Carolina. As soon as you start stacking stories, you're essentially stacking those dollar bills. And it's not a proportional growth, it's an exponential growth. 2-story building, 3-story building, 6-story building. You might be wondering by now, you've heard some of the other presenters talk about this morning, you're seeing it here. This seems so simple, right? The per acre analysis, it seems like it's logical. Why hasn't anybody talked about this stuff before? And it's mind-blowing to us that when we go around and travel and do this stuff, that this isn't part of our lexicon of how we talk about investment yet. And sometimes new ideas take a while to sink in. In 1972, a pilot patented putting wheels on luggage. It's for those of us that are older than can remember the 70s, remember the O.J. Simpson car commercial where O.J. was running through an airport carrying his luggage, right? That patent expired in 1991, and then wheels became mainstreamed on luggage. Let this wash over you for a second. We actually put a man on the moon before we put wheels on luggage. Did we not know what a wheel was? So the technology that we use, the way that we look at real estate, actually goes back to the 60s. It goes back to this guy, Ian McCart, who wrote a book called Design with Nature. In Design with Nature, he started talking about economics, and he even says we have but one explicit model of the world, and that is built upon economics. Money is our measure. If that's how we look at the world, let's show the money. So I can map your brain. I can show you how your brain works, right? We're used to seeing MRIs. We can see this data, and it's not voodoo. It's how our brains work. I can show you the inside of an earthworm, right? Can we get into the city? Can we move the city aside? And can I show you your infrastructure, that's a little washed out. The buildings that are built on your infrastructure. And we're used to geologies, hydrology, geology, right? Let's split between nature and the man-made, and let's see your economics. Can I make you a model of your economics and see how you're functioning financially? Here's Asheville. This is my county. This is a big park up here. This is the Biltmore estate. So we have no value in gray. Green is cold value, low value. As soon as you get hot, you get to high value. So the Biltmore estate is worth $100 million. When Bill Cecil shows up he's the heir to the Vanderbilt fortune, when he shows up at a council meeting, we all genuflect and thank him for his time. He's worth $100 million. Well, he's got the biggest house in the country, and he's sitting on 8,000 acres of land. Anybody have 8,000 acres under their house? No, he's got the biggest gas tank. So of course, it's worth a lot of money. That's true. But how do I compare him to me? How do we see ourselves relationally? We say value per acre, the map changes. Here it is in 3D. Anybody want to take a wild guess where downtown Asheville might possibly be? Boom, it ends right about here. And what's neat about this model is we can see Asheville, we can see its downtown, we can see what's happening in Biltmore Village. But we can also see our little sister over here, Black Mountain. Black Mountain's about 12,000 people. We can see its little main street popping up, kind of like Baby Bear if this is Mama Bear, right? So we've been working with Will, and I want to thank you all for including us in this process to look at you all. And that's probably why you're all here, is to see how you function. Here's your overall miles per tank of your city. You've got Fort Benning as this big gray non-taxable splotch down here. And this is typically how the lens at which you might view your city. The hot spots are the higher value properties, but they're also the largest properties. So to go from total value to value per acre, the map changes, and here it is in 3D. Can you figure out what downtown is? So that's your tax effect, that's your tax productivity model. This is how you're generating taxes. Now, I've left up here a draft because we need to still work with you all on some missing data on your parcels, and we'd like to work with you on ironing that out a little bit. But basically, this is your economic MRI. This is where your productivity is happening from a property tax standpoint. Removing Fort Benning and then zooming into your corridors, you can see the veins of productivity going out. These are a higher revenue producer than your typical standard residential, particularly because you have that residential property tax cap that kind of skews the marketplace a little bit. But again, this is what's going on financially. There's your downtown in isolation. So your downtown takes up 0.1% of the whole portfolio. That's its footprint inside the entire city. Yet it's about 1.3% of the property tax production. So at a producer level, it's a 1 to 13 ratio. To think of it another way, if you have, let's say 100 people on your sales force, and one person is accountable to 13% of your revenue, how would you treat that individual? Would you walk up to her once a year and just like slap her upside the head? No, of course not. You'd buy her a car. Like, thank you. So this is a high producer, right? A little bit of space. Zooming into your old city limits now, again, per tank. Here's per acre. And you can start to see your downtown and the old core of the city, Midtown, in this image. And so there's just to isolate Midtown, there it is. It's like a little baby compared to downtown. Now again, it doesn't have the sizable buildings that the downtown has yet, if you think of it that way. So as you think about growing your city, think about where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. Here are your corridors coming out of the city. We think that some of these may be anomalies. Again, I don't know until we have the full data. Just again, see this as an 80% picture. It's giving you some ideas of what's going on. There are parcels that are totally missing data. There's just nothing there. It might be either a clerical issue or it's not tied to the GIS properly. And again, we'll work with you all to fix that. But looking at it in a bigger way, if we were to include Fort Benning in the county, a lot of it isn't. It's about a 50-50 ratio of taxable and non-taxable. Once you remove Fort Benning, your county is kind of like what we typically see, 16% non-taxable. That's parks, churches, stuff like that. When you get into the downtown, you're at about a 65-35% taxable, non-taxable. To put that in perspective, Asheville's 44% non-taxable. We're a little bit on the high side. But for what you have, for the cultural institutions you have, this is actually pretty good. This is your most fertile soil. This is your most fertile garden. Now the buildings at a production level, we grabbed your Walmart at Whittlesey Boulevard is about, what is that, 500, let's call it $600,000 an acre. We'll use this as a control subject. This is actually one of your best performing Walmarts. The others, you've got a lot of Walmarts. You have like 5, it's crazy. This is the top end, but we'll go ahead and use that as a control subject. Bradley Park, by comparison, is about $1 million an acre, about double the Walmart. Fountain Park Shopping Center is about $300,000. Peachtree Mall is about $1.3 million. And again, I'll keep the Walmart down here at $600,000 is your control subject. So the mall is about twice a Walmart in tax productivity. Your Publix supermarket, which is kind of in Bradley Park, is kind of out there. It's like 1.2 million. And this was interesting. Columbus Park Crossing, I mean, I have to tell you, that's insane, whatever's going on out there. I mean, the thing, you can probably see it from the moon. It's like one continuous finger of big boxes. You can actually see the curvature of the earth in this picture. That's only producing about $400,000 of value per acre. It's less than a Walmart. That's the Dow. There are things built into the system, put real simply, the cheaper the building I make, the lower the taxes I pay in your community. The more land I consume, I get an additional benefit on the taxes as well. It's like a tax break when I consume even more of your real estate. Well, y'all are on the hook for the infrastructure. Also when I consume most of your real estate. So just be aware of that. Marketplace shopping centers, $600,000 an acre, and village on Midtown is pulling about $2 million an acre value in the state. So these can go on from here. You've got some Aflacs. So we grab them. This will show you the state of value based on land use. This property is probably about $2 million per acre, while the main campus technology drives $500,000 actually. It's actually about a Walmart in value tax per. Now does that trade? A lot more jobs out there. You get into jobs, range pattern, Columbus, Bank and Trust, dollar here. You guys are killing it. $19 value per acre out of your building. And then this building is about $18 million, $19 million value per acre. Sorry. So we're surrounded by this heritage, and this is one of the main sponsorization of this conference. So what do these old buildings do? Incidentally, they use Phoenix postcard from the 1900s. But the laws right now is no doubt. We'd like to grab it out. Other laws starting to see that Johnson Mills is about $4 million value per acre. The losses are about 5,000. They're still being filled up. As long as these more value as people are on that space. So these buildings are actually recited in the community and have heritage. So this is an Empire building. It used to be the investment building. Back in the day, built in 1876. They tore the balustrades, this little off, and two more stories on top of it. It's $4.9 billion. That's probably $5 million. Again, that Walmart is $600,000. So these buildings disappear. There's value come back, and they hold value over time. This is the First National Bank, otherwise means the Iron Bank, $8 million value per acre. Built right after the Civil War. How do you date it? This is the oldest lodge built in 1902. This thing's $59 million per acre. Today. Is it all surprising? You guys are quiet. I'm offended. So I'm not going to bother with all of this. This is just sharp tax productivity of different building types. It's residential, commercial, brings buildings. This is the historic downtown using about $1,000 in tax per acre. To put that into perspective, mall is about $8,000 an acre, and here's Columbus crossing $3,000 of taxes per acre, which is just above residential family $2,300 per acre. So you'll have this chart right at this is the Flowers building $900,000 per acre. Columbus Bank killing it, $131,000 of tax reduction per acre. So we try to visualize this is a 100-acre grid. So basically this here's the satellite shot of crossing right here. That's about a $36 million house. This is amount of acres that it consumes. It's about $4,000 per acre. To put that in perspective, let's strip them all to 1996. It's actually 2.8 times more productive if it's just given to you. So just be aware of that. You have the stuff that you think is blighted is actually better than the shiny new. You get into the downtown, about 30 acres of development. It's about $3 million downtown is averaging 7 times the potency of this park crossing. Apples to apples. So if you have 3 acres of the Columbus Bank and Trust building, that would equal the entire 120 flat campus. If you have 3 acres of the Empire building, it would equal the 86 acres of Columbus Park Crossing. You know, to start having stuff happen. 1.2 acres of the Iron building equal the 16 acres of Walmart. Again, apples to apples. So you're not the only state that's around artificial economic system, housing. And Indiana, South Bend, and the state is doing the circuit across the border, restricting everybody's property tax. It's actually happening in California. So y'all are just like California. 1978. California restrictions on their property taxes and necessary issues. It's spread like wildfire through a lot of states adopted these. You're not alone. So again, your grandparents fly to California and figure out how they're dealing with this stuff. Because California is trying to amend these things. This is Sonoma County, California. And this is all the hot spots. When you put a constraint on the state that actually puts council, your budget doesn't drop. It actually keeps on increase. You gotta find new money someplace. So the incentive in California is to build new buildings because now they can lock the clock and not be stuck in these values, right? So constantly fire around the cities where this is all the new development. If you look at let's just focus over here. This is all 2000. You see how high the value is. Look at its neighbors around it that happens to be trapped in time. So it accounts for that. There's a drive to get new sales so you can see sucking back on those properties. You all are the same way. Here's your residential population stripping out your commercial, and here's all the transactions that happened since 2000. So we'll leave these with you. If you go back and look at your model, you'll see the pre-2000 sales are a lot lower than the newer ones. In California, they call it the tax on the young. Anybody that moves to town, they whack them with a higher tax rate, which is a great thank you gift for showing up in town. You should have that in a little peach basket when you hand them a house. Here's your higher tax bill. I hope you enjoy it. Retail sales, we're still trying to work with your state about getting your retail sales. This is a tax model or graph of all the different states in the country. Red is property taxes, so at the far end on the left is Maine. At the other end of the spectrum are the states that run mostly off retail taxes. Y'all are kind of leaning toward the retail side. Green is retail. Colorado is more dependent on retail taxes than you are at local level. You generally don't want to be hanging out over with Arkansas and Alabama on the far right. When you depend on retail taxes, as you know, when you have a recession, the first thing people stop doing is spending. They don't move out of their house. So housing, property tax is actually more stable than retail taxes. But in Durango, a fairly small town, isolated, no influences, actually became a perfect model to study. Here's the property tax production of the community, and you can clearly see downtown. South Durango is the entire commercial core. This is where the mall, the Walmart, the Home Depot, all of that's down that spine on South Durango. So they were like, well, the retail taxes are probably going to catch up. So here's the retail tax model of Durango, and downtown's still killing it. And this is total productivity, jobs. So time and time again, we see that it's a much more efficient form that produces higher economic potency in the downtown. Again, if you make it apples to apples. So to look at downtown versus South Durango, this is the retail tax productivity difference between the two districts. This is the county tax difference between South Durango and downtown. Yet the footprint of what the size of that blotch is versus this stuff is that. So downtown's 1/3 the footprint, it's almost as much tax production with being just 1/3 the size. So we said at lunch, just add 8.3 more acres of downtown, just do more of that, and you'll catch up to all the retail production of the South Durango. Did y'all get this as clear in the graphics? Over time, we looked at their retail tax production. This is downtown, this is South Durango down here, these are two other districts. So from pre-recession to post-recession, you can see the saddle of the recession affecting retail taxes right here. So downtown used to be 81% or 86% of South Durango in tax productivity. After the recession, downtown grew, and it almost got to 91% of South Durango. So it started catching up. And we thought, well, clearly this is because they're doing renovation downtown, they're doing more buildings, so we pulled all the building permits. And this is the amount of new buildings that downtown added, and this is the amount of buildings that South Durango added. That's data. That's there in the community, it's hiding in plain sight. So we just said, pound for pound, dollar for dollar, square foot for square foot, downtown is punching well above its weight. Every new inch that you add of downtown has a tremendous escalation in value. They also shared their books with us. Just about caught up on time here. This is the local coffee shop and bookstore on Main Street. They opened their books to us so we could compare them against Walmart. This is the footprint difference between the two. This is the county property tax difference per acre in the coffee shop and the bookstore versus Walmart. This is the retail tax productivity difference between the two of them. Jobs. So as you look at this data, ask yourself, who's hiring the local accountant? Who's hiring the local attorney? Who's sponsoring the Little League team? Who's spending their nights and weekends picking up cigarette butts in the streets and down the downtown? You know, these are the things that you have to have a value statement to understand the economics of the wealth. This isn't all just about hating on Walmart. Again, it's not about the player. So back to tax literacy. We just finished Charleston. Here's their model. Here's their downtown. Here's their old buildings. This is the most potent building in all of Charleston's metropolitan area. It's only 11 stories tall. I'm a big nerd about taxation, as you can obviously tell. I love this quote from the colonists: "Don't tax me, don't tax thee, tax the fellow behind the tree." Again, this is our genetic makeup. We don't like paying taxes. I don't like paying taxes, but if you make a commitment to the community and I see the value return, I'm happy to. This building, by the way, is a prison that the British used to lock colonists up in. And here's the red coat. So when people in Boston freaked out, they immediately imprisoned all the people in Charleston to keep them from acting up. Right across the street from this building is this building. Here it is, built in 1686. That's 1686. This is a revolutionary walking down the street. It's the oldest liquor store in the entire country. This is the proprietor of the oldest liquor store. He's very proud of us. This is his whole store. It's $13 million of value per acre. To put that in perspective, their Walmart's about $900,000. He was showing me old pictures from the 1800s when it was still a liquor store. It's kind of weird because he's actually British. I'm like, dude, your prison's like right next door. It's like that. In the neighborhood, they have all these old buildings. This is $88 million of value per acre. Nothing to write home about. It's just masonry, windows. They even have like a switching station in front of it. But that urban environment, that community, why people go there, that environment is what's producing value. So we thought, hey, let's just grab all the buildings that predate the Declaration of Independence. Any building that's older than the United States that happens to be in Charleston. Well, here they all are. Here they are with their tax production. So we corralled them all up, just the ones in the downtown. There are about 21 acres of buildings. And last year they paid the county $600,000 in taxes. That's what those buildings wrote a check to the county for last year. By comparison, their best Walmart, built in 2005, is also 21 acres, and wrote a check for $47,000 an acre, or for $47,000 in total taxes. Again, 21 acres producing $47,000, 21 acres producing $630,000 for over 240 years. What kind of investment do you want to have in your community? Is that depressing? You know, it's 13 times the potency. It survived hurricanes, fires, and earthquakes. Did y'all know Charleston had a massive earthquake? Wars, about a half dozen wars. You know, they've seen it all, but those buildings have continually produced wealth. Excuse me? That'll be gone by 2020. You know, to quote Chief Justice Brandeis, these are the relentless rules of humble arithmetic. If you just do the math on this stuff, it'll give you a different reality. And you're probably wondering, Joe, you just don't get it. You don't understand people. People want to spread out. This is America. We want lots of land. I don't want to have to deal with a neighbor and their barking dog and all that stuff. You don't get it. We can stretch out. So what if I could bring you the Ghost of Christmas Future? What if I could bring you a county that did 100% monolithic, suburban, post-World War II development? You know Gwinnett County, right? So we were hired by Gwinnett County, their Chamber of Commerce, actually. And Lawrenceville is the county seat. I'd never heard of Lawrenceville. I'm only 4 hours away. And I was under explicit orders when I was to make the presentation like this. I was not allowed to use the word urban, which is really hard when your company's called Urban 3. City, town, or municipal. I was not allowed to use those words. And I asked why, and they said, Joe, you need to understand, these are rural people here. We're not city people. So don't offend them with those words, just, we're rural. Because we're outside the Beltway here. This is Gwinnett County, right? Now, when we started doing the analysis, we figured out there are 812,000 people in Gwinnett County. That's a lot of people, right? I called up the chamber and I was like, what's up with this? You're 800,000 people, and Kelly Brownlow was the client. She goes, yeah, but honey, you need to understand, we're 460 square miles, we're huge. All right, I'm just some dumb hillbilly, I don't know what that means. So I do understand density. You divide 800,000 people into 460 square miles, that's about 1,900 people per square mile, right? You follow me? Each of these little people is 100 people. So we had all this other data, and we're like, okay, so you're less dense than DeKalb, but let's check you got some other places. Does anybody know what's in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina? Charlotte. I was like, how the hell did you guys get 200 people denser than Mecklenburg? You didn't produce a Charlotte. You're 600 people denser than Davidson, Tennessee. That's Nashville. Both of these two places have a professional sports team. What did you do? This is Austin. You're double the density of Austin. You didn't make an Austin, Texas, America's fastest growing city. You didn't produce a Raleigh and Asheville. And this is what 35,000 people looks like in a rural environment. This is Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So what have you been telling yourselves? There's what we say, what we think is going on, and there's reality, right? So here's your model. And when Josh McCarthy did the model, I was talking with Josh, and I'm like, this is weird. Could you turn it on its side? So he turns it on its side, and it looks like a 1970s shag carpet. It's just like, they stretched out and developed every square inch of that county. They consumed everything with the same monolithic form of development. This is what we typically see. This is Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So you can see Chapel Hill, Carrboro, and Hillsborough, and I can see Papa Bear, Mama Bear, baby bear in the Main Street, here's some new urbanism. I can see in the data that urban form, they made wealth. This is what you got. So their highest value per acre is a bank building built in Buford that's $8 million of value per acre. All of these other cities are less dense than Gwinnett County and more value. Y'all follow me? So I said, you can tell yourself you're rural all day long. I can tell you all, I'm 6 foot tall, I have a full head of hair, and I look like Brad Pitt. But then I gotta walk by a mirror, right? There's reality. So just to rub it in, we put Nashville, Austin, and Lawrenceville, the counties, side by side at the same scale, and ran an economic heart monitor, the whole thing. And we're like, all right, well, we got a peak value of $192 million in Nashville, $476 million in the less dense Austin, and y'all are flatlining at $8 million. So you have all the same horizontal infrastructure as these places, none of the wealth to pay for it. Are you going broke yet? And they're all like, oh yeah, we're going broke. So, how the hell did that happen? It's no rocket science here. So I'm going to skip ahead to the close here because I think I'm out of time. We'll get to the Q&A. Unless, do you want me to keep going or what should I do, Jim?
Go, we can come back.
What's that?
Go to the end and we come back to you.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, we answered this.
South Bend, Indiana, I just finished this project 2 days ago. We're just mapping their sewers. This is their population on the lower left. They apexed in their population in 1963. That's when Studebaker and Packard moved to Detroit and dropped their population. You can see it kind of flatlines after that. They lost their major employers. On the right is their pipe construction. So we just went ahead and mapped their pipes since the beginning of time, and we can see them building the city. And you see the ticker at the top. Right at around 1963, their population stops, which is like right about here. And we asked them, like, why are you adding more pipe? You're not adding more people. This is a liability that will come into you or your grandkids 40, 50 years from now when you have to rebuild this stuff. And that's just the pipe. You've got all of this roads too. Taking the pipe and stretching it out end to end. This is the blue is their pipe growth indexed against their population growth, which is in red. You know, it's like we're those, to quote John, these lost civilization of people in the early 1900s, were they like having dysentery in the streets? Like, what's up with that? Did they not get water then or something? So stretching their pipes from end to end will stretch from downtown South Bend to my house in Asheville. This is the community's liability. Well, you have to pay for this. So I want you to be aware that there's behavioral quirks in the system. The industry is operating with a mathematical set that you just have to be aware of. And there's gains in the system. The reason why I was at the assessors conference was this map. Taking your buildings, pull your tax card, you've got buildings or improvement value, and you've got dirt value, right? Turning the buildings off, and we just made a map. This is how you expect the world to operate. Everybody in this neighborhood has the same dirt value per acre, right? You follow me there? So as we were doing this, I was presenting to the community. It was like 8 in the morning, an audience much like this. And I said, what's going on here where this property's dirt is $15,000 an acre, and as soon as you cross the street, it doubles to $35,000 an acre? How in the same zoning category could land double in value on the same street in the same zoning category? And the tax assessor was sitting in the front row, and she raised her hand up. And she's like, no, you don't understand. And I was like, try me, what am I missing? And she goes, well, the more land you have, the lower the value. The mayor just about spat coffee out of his nose. He was laughing so hard. And I'm like, really? So I've got 3/4 of a mile of a street here, 3/4 of a mile of street, another half mile and a half mile. I've got 3 miles of streets around us. This fellow's only got 200 feet of frontage. She goes, yeah, we don't count infrastructure. It's not part of the value. It's not the transactional cost. I was like, all right, well, this site's bigger. If it's bigger, it's got more use. It's got more cars that go to it. More cars mean more car accidents, which means more fire calls, more police calls. She's like, hey, we don't count any of that. It's the value. It's our standard. Our standard is the more land, the lower the value. So I went to the assessors with this, the assessors conference, and I was like, where'd y'all get the standard? Did Moses give it to you? Like, does it make any sense? And they're like, it doesn't. And their magazine is called Fair and Equitable. So I asked them, how is this fair? Or how is it equitable? And they're like, it's not. You need to talk to Larry Clark. So I tracked this guy, I don't know if you ever talked to Larry Clark, tracked this guy Larry Clark down in the hallway and show him this. And I'm like, Larry, how's this fair or equitable? It's like, it's not, we probably need to change that. That's the way the world works. So just be aware these aren't invisible market forces that are making the world happen in front of your face. There are policies that drive this stuff. In Normandy, you were taxed on your building footprint. So people figured out that we just project out over the street and get extra storage extra stories without paying for it. In England, you were taxed on your windows progressively. The more glass that you had, glass was expensive, the higher your tax bill. People started boarding up their windows to avoid taxes. They threw the tax policy out. In France, anything below your roof line was considered your building. Anything above it was considered the roof. So they stuck stories up there in the mansard roof. It was a tax loophole. So be aware that the system that's around you is brought to you by policy, and these are your policies that you can change. Your city is worth $10.4 billion. Columbus is worth more than all of the professional sports teams in Georgia. You're about 11.1 Falcons. So, counselors, think about this. You know, it's the owner of the, is it Mr. Blank, owns the Falcons? I'm sure he knows Matt Ryan's towel bills. I can tell you that cups in a nightclub cost 5 cents a pop. Your community needs to be as literate about the numbers that you see and the cost of producing the society that you have and where things cost more and what the return is on that investment. Just be aware of that stuff. If you're not measuring it, you can't manage it. And you need to see the numbers on that stuff. Your policies can hurt you. And just put the gun down and do your math. Thanks.